We all have people in our lives, whether it be family members or close friends, just people that we love who have experienced some kind of trauma in their childhood, and we see how it affects them even as adults. And we do everything that we can to encourage them. We want to see them healthy and whole and living meaningful lives. And we listen to them share, and we encourage them to see therapists and maybe even to seek medical help. But we wonder, can this friend of mine, this loved one, really live a meaningful life? Is she or is he too broken to be able to recover from what happened when they were so young in those such formative years? And this is exactly the topic that Francine Rivers unpacks in her book, The Masterpiece. She explores the idea of, can people who have suffered trauma in their childhood, can they recover from that, and can they live whole and happy and joyful lives as adults? Can Jesus transform even the most broken people among us? What if the person who is hurting fails to acknowledge Christ? What if they've turned their back on God? What then? Is there still hope? Is there a way for God to redeem the brokenness of their lives and bring wholeness to them? Grace Moore and Roman Velasco have both experienced childhood trauma. This is a love story between the two of them, but it is their love story. But more significantly, it is a love story about God, and about how God, even when they weren't able to see it, even when maybe they had turned their backs on God and thought that they were completely alone, that God had not abandoned them, but that had seen them through circumstances of their lives when they didn't even fully realize it. It's one of those books that goes kind of back and forth. You're in the present day, and then the author goes back and into their childhood, and then they go into their young adult lives, and it unpacks the trauma that each of them experienced as they were growing up. And it talks about their journey of coming to know God and to trust God and to be able to put their lives into His hand. Roman grew up in the streets of Los Angeles. He was a gang tagger. It's so funny because I did not intend, this is not supposed to be a theme of mine. Last week, if you saw my video, it was about the gangs of Los Angeles, and here, the male protagonist in this book grew up as a gang member in Los Angeles. But he was a tagger, which I didn't know what that meant. That meant basically that he was a graffiti artist. And, that landed him in trouble throughout his teen years. But as he grew older, and this isn't giving anything away, you know this from the beginning, he begins to make a career out of his art, and he is able to actually support himself and is quite a respected artist in his adult years. So the book, the title, The Masterpiece, deals with the artist that he is, but more than anything, I think what our author, we gradually begin to realize as we go through the book is that, a life that is placed in God's hands can become a masterpiece regardless of where it started. God will turn our lives into something absolutely beautiful. And that's something that we begin to see as we journey with Grace and Roman through their experiences. I have not read a lot of Christian fiction, and the ones that I have read, honestly, I gotta say, I didn't think I liked Christian fiction. Regardless of whether a book explores Christian themes or not, it has to, the plot has to be good. There has to be a good story. And so often I have felt like that is something that was sacrificed for the sake of trying to make a point. Maybe the story was sacrificed or the integrity of the characters was sacrificed. And so I've been a little bit turned off to Christian fiction. And honestly, even in this book, there were points that made me kind of go or cringe, that made me a little bit uncomfortable, because I thought, oh, this is gonna turn into something preachy, and we're gonna, the character of Grace, at times I think feels almost a little unreal to me, because she is a believer, she is a Christian. But I pushed through, and I'm really so glad that I did, because in the end, it ended up being, really an encouraging read. I was particularly drawn to the portions of the story that dealt with the people who influenced, well, especially Roman's life. There's so much talk about influencers, and normally when we think about influencers, this is kind of what we think about. We think about social media, YouTube, Instagram, whatever. And sure enough, those are people who influence the way we think, and they influence the things that we do, the ways we spend our time. But I loved reading about people who are just quietly influencing others in their day-to-day lives, just through loving people and building relationships and getting to know them. And even though this was a book that was fiction, there are obviously people like that every day. His foster parents, and especially he went to like a group home in his later teen years for a couple of years. And those stories of those times really draw me in. They capture my imagination. I love reading about those. I love imagining that I could maybe one day be a person like that who just influences people and helps them to find healing in their lives. The book is fairly predictable. You do know from the beginning, right out that it is a love story. So you do know that. And yet, again, it is worth reading because it really is encouraging. And especially if you are somebody who has a traumatic experience in your past, or if you feel like your growing up years were less than ideal, I think this is a great book to offer hope, to offer encouragement. I chose this book because, going into February, I thought it would be fun to read a love story. I specifically chose this one. Well, one, it was a gift that I wanted a book exchange, but also because I have read another work of Francine Rivers. It was called Redeeming Love, and that is a retelling of the story of Hosea, and that is a very good book. I highly recommend it. But so therefore, despite the fact that I say I don't like Christian fiction that much, I decided to give this one a chance, and I thought it was a good book. I would recommend it. But February it's not just a month for celebrating love and Valentine's. It is also a month where we remember, Black history. It's Black History Awareness Month. And so for that reason, I'm going to read Gloria Naylor's book, The Women of Brewster Place, this next week, and I will have a video about my thoughts about that next Sunday. I do a video every single Sunday. My goal for 2025 is to read a book every week and to talk about it. Partly it's to hold me accountable to be reading books a lot and to be reflecting on them, not just reading them, but to actually reflect on them. And also it's to help me to get comfortable with social media. You can see if you watch my videos every week, they look a little bit different, and I'm trying just different things to see what works, what feels comfortable to me. But anyway, I would love it if you would join me and tune in next Sunday, and as I talk about The Women of Brewster Place, and make comments and let me know if you've read the books, or what are some books that you like. Do you have a Christian book that you would recommend? or a book that would be great for this month of February. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a great week.